Gardner.
Thanks very much. I've just got a couple of specific questions about some projects that are either under assessment or shortly will be in Western Australia. Maybe just to start with an overview question. Are staff within your department allocated by expertise or by state? And if so, how many do you allocate to WA?
Senator, I'm just looking at the statistics so I can give you an accurate answer on that. 14. So in the first instance, what I would say is that we've organized our branches according to geography because, as Senator Waters was pointing out earlier on, the connection with the states is essential. And so in the Western Assessments branch, for example, we have currently paid FTE of 32.5 officers.
Okay.
Now, within each of those teams, you'll have a range of expertise and backgrounds, as you would expect.
Yeah. Thank you.
Senator, could I just add to that? Of course, the staff in Mr Knudson's division draw on expertise in other parts of the department. So, for example, and importantly in the Wildlife Heritage and Marine Division, who do have particular species experts there, and also expertise outside the department, including through the National Environmental Science Program hubs. So, it's not a sort of binary choice, if you know what I mean.
It's a bit of both. You've got some people dedicated to geography, some people dedicated to expertise, and they talk to each other. Thanks. Okay. So I want to, the first questions I want to put to you relate to the Perth Freight Link, which you no doubt be aware is a new freight, a toll highway, which will is proposed to lead from the northeastern suburbs all the way through to just short of the container port in Fremantle. Tendering has begun. There are 3 tenderers. So BGC Contracting, Langer Rourke, Arab and Jacobs are one of the consortia. Clough, Breardy, WSP, Parsons, Brinkhoff and Hyder are the second. Leighton Contractors, Giorgio, GHD, ACOM, BG&E and WA Limestone are the third. So there's federal funding allocated, there's state funding allocated, and there's expressions of interest going out to tender. Have you even begun your environmental assessment process on that project yet?
Senator, there's a range of projects related to that.
Yep.
The only project that currently is under consideration is the Roe Highway extension. We haven't had any referrals at this point in relation to the sort of key components of the Perth Freight Link.
Well, that is a key component, but that's all right. So you're looking at that segment, which is 8 or 9 Ks in the middle. How far along is your assessment? Just if you could provide us with an update of your work program on that project.
Sure. Senator, there was as you would be aware, there was a controlled action decision taken on the 7th of September 2009. The assessment has been undertaken through the bilateral agreement with the Western Australian Government. At this point in time, we're awaiting for the final state approval and conditions prior to completing our assessment and then advising on whether the project should be approved or not.
Okay. I asked your departmental colleagues yesterday whether there's any material difference when it's a state or territory as the proponent of a project as opposed to if it's a private development. They gave me their view. Do the approvals or the assessment process, I should say, does that look any different from your point of view when it's a state that's the proponent, which is the case?
No.
No? Different stakeholders, but the process is identical.
We've got a clear process that's set out in the legislation that we follow irrespective of whether it's a state or a private proponent.
Do you follow the same process irrespective of whether the project has already been given approval and is funded, as this one has? The decision's clearly been made to build it. Does that affect your assessment process at all when the decision's already been made?
No, Senator. We'll just consider the requirements of their legislation as we move through an assessment and approval process.
Okay. So it doesn't make any difference to your work plan. You're being asked to decide whether this project is environmentally acceptable. Premier Barnett and Prime Minister Tony Abbott have already decided on your behalf that it is. Does that make any difference?
Well, Senator, we're going through a process to assess that project, like Roe Highway, for example, currently, and there will be a decision made at an appropriate time following the assessment processes.
Do you have anybody working on that at the moment, or it made it sound...
Senator Lovell,
go ahead.
just to be crystal clear,
the EPBC Act stands and the officials, and ultimately Minister Hunt will act in accordance with the Act.
Well, that's profound.
Well,
They
yeah,
won't-
well, Senator, you were implying that there might be some suggestion otherwise.
No, I'm implying, I guess, just get the implication correct, that you're wasting these people's time when the decision's already been made to build the project, no matter what they say. That's what I was implying.
Senator, I'm making clear that Minister Hunt, as the Minister for the Environment, will abide by the EPBC Act, will make a determination on that. He has no preconception of what that decision will be, because he will abide by the Act in accordance with advice or informed by advice from officials.
So you don't think, since you've decided to intervene, Minister, you don't think that he might be guided by the fact that the Prime Minister sitting next to him at the Cabinet table's already said this project's going ahead?
I think he will make sure that that whatever is approved complies with the Act.
Just to be clear, it is true, is it not, that even if the department finds that the project's environmentally unacceptable, the Minister is free to ignore that advice and allow the project to proceed anyway?
The Minister is ultimately the decision maker on a number of projects, and the Minister will make a decision as he sees fit. But I cannot possibly speculate on what the Minister would decide on this project or any project.
That's right.
It's up to
But
him.
you provide advice, the Minister is free to accept it or ignore it.
The Minister has his authorities under the legislation and can make whatever decision he thinks is
Thank
appropriate
you.
within the
I'm not trying to
framework.
draw a distinction between this project and all the others. I understand that there's no special rules apply to this one. It's just people on the ground are very well aware that the process will go ahead according to the law, as Senator Birmingham's identified. The Prime Minister's already decided that this thing's going to be built no matter what you say, and the Minister Hunt is free to ignore your advice in the event that you come out and say it's a terrible idea. So I'm paraphrasing, but I just want to make sure I'm clear.
And you're presenting a hypothetical. So the officials will prepare their advice, as is the norm. Minister Hunt will consider it and act upon it under the terms of the Act, as is the norm.
Yep, we are in perfect agreement with that. Under section 136(1)(b) of the Act, the Minister has to consider economic and social matters. Do you have access to the business case? Because nobody else does. Has that been made available to you in the course of your assessment process thus far?
Not that I'm aware, Senator.
Could you check for us?
Sure.
How will you make an economic assessment of the project if the proponents keep the business case secret from you, as they've kept it secret from everybody else?
Senator, as I think I've said at other sessions, it is standard practice for us to provide the Minister information on the social and economic considerations behind any project. As a course of matter, that rarely would be a comprehensive economic assessment of an individual project, because that is not our primary focus. Our focus is on making sure that the environmental considerations are thoroughly and comprehensively considered and dealt with. And it is a consideration that the Minister may take into account, the social and economic considerations, and we try to support him in making that decision.
I didn't say you may take them into account. You must take them into account. So if the information's not forthcoming from the proponent, where do you get your information on the economic impacts from?
Senator, I don't think we've had a single case where we've had any difficulty providing at least some economic or where relevant social considerations for a project.
We just cut and paste off somebody's website? Let's put this another way. Will you be requesting or requiring the proponent hand that business case over to you?
Senator, we'll ensure that the Minister has adequate information to make that determination with respect to the
I'm
social
asking
and
about whether
economic
you have
consideration.
adequate information. Where are you getting it from? Will you at least require the proponent to hand that over to you?
Senator, we haven't gotten to this stage in this decision. That
Okay.
comes at the end of the assessment process, and we haven't got to that point yet.
Will you be requesting or requiring that the proponent hand that over? It would seem to me to be a bit of a sham to say that you're assessing the economic impacts of the project if the key document, which has been precluded from public viewing, if you won't even ask for that, how are we to have any confidence at all that you're assessing the economic impacts of the project?
Senator, Mr Knudsen didn't say that. He was indicating in a general sense, because it's a hypothetical question, we've not got to that point in the process, which he did make very clear, but he's indicating that we have an onus on us as advisors to the Minister and to the government in relation to these matters is that we have to satisfy ourselves about the adequacy of the information that we have.
Yeah, how do you
and
do
we
that?
will take the means that we need to get that information.
I'm really keen to know how. It's not hypothetical for me to ask you whether you will be requesting that document from the proponent.
Well,
That's not a hypothetical at all.
As Mr Knudsen said, we need to go through a process to assess the documentation, and Mr Thompson said that's in front of us, work out if there are any gaps, and then we would then work out what we need to fulfil those gaps.
And Senator Ludlam, I think that is the key point. It is for the proponent to provide evidence and information to the department.
Yeah.
The department to then ask the proponent for further information if they think the initially provided information is inadequate. So it's not for the department to prejudge what it is they need by way of which particular documents from the proponent. It's for the proponent to provide it, and if the department thinks there's inadequate information, they'll go back and ask for more.
Do you, Minister, again, since you've chosen to intervene, do you think a business case is a materially important to a project worth well over $1 billion in taxpayers' money?
Well, Senator Ludlam, I think it is.
Great.
However, Senator Ludlam, let me finish. It is not for the Minister for the Environment to make a determination about the expenditure of those public resources. As you have highlighted, economic and social impacts are a factor taken into consideration in the EPBC approvals process. It is for other arms of state or federal government or private developers, where that's the case, to make determinations about whether there is a cost benefit from undertaking those activities and whether the finances of them stack up. So do I think a business case is important for that level of public expenditure? Yes, as a member of the government, I do. Do I think that it is necessarily required for the Minister for the Environment to fulfil his obligations? No, not necessarily. That depends on the adequacy of all of the information provided to the Minister to allow him to make the full assessment, including of the economic and social factors, which may include, in some instances, a business case, may include, in some instances, extracts of a business case, may include economic modelling, may include a range of information upon which, as I said before, the proponent provides to the department. The department will then go back to the proponent if they believe that information is inadequate.
There's nothing stopping the department from just cutting and pasting from a website put up by the proponent, though, is there? We've seen that done before. It's without any critical analysis whatsoever.
Sorry, there's no presumption that we do cut and paste, Senator.
But there's nothing stopping you doing that. You don't actually have to apply any critical analysis or ground truth to any of the assumptions that underpin this thing, economically or socially.
Senator, it all comes down to the adequacy of the information provided and available in relation to a project.
Yeah.
And obviously, adequacy is not just about volume, it is also about quality.
Okay. Can the department compel the proponent to produce a given document under your Act?
Senator, if we identified that there was a gap in the information and asked for that information to be provided, we'd effectively pause the approval until that information is provided.
It's not a legal compulsion, but you can stop the clock until certain stuff is provided.
Yep,
That's as good as compulsion, I guess. Okay.
And that's what the Minister's done in relation to the Watermark project as an example, as I understand.
Oh, I'm just going to be parochial and stick to WA for the moment.
Senator Ludlam, can I just ask how much longer you...
Maybe I might go to my last